Hello, I'm Bonnie McDonald Dixon with Storyvan TV and the Healthy Wealthy Camper. We're here today with a dear friend of mine, a new friend, Annie Bourke, Cosmic Heart Institute. She is amazing, an international animal communicator, and animal medium. She helps people and understand what's happening with their pets. She helps people, provides people with peace of mind for their animal parents. When these animals transition, we want to know what's happened. We want to know where have they gone and what were they thinking, because we know our animals think about us. And so with Annie, I just want to say thank you for coming on the show today because people really want to know, how to talk to their pets. But I have a question. How did you know that you could talk to animals in spirit?
Hi, Bonnie, and thank you for the invitation to be on your show. Yes, I was at a spiritual development course, and one of the activities that we were asked to do was to speak to animals in spirit. And so we were just paired up with someone in the room, someone that I didn't know, and had to tune in and see what messages we got. And the lady that I was working with had this lovely little dog in spirit, and he showed me this beautiful little ball, and it was made out of material, but all little segments of different coloured material, like segments of an orange. And his mum confirmed that that was his favourite toy. And then he started saying to me, chocolate. And he went on and on and on about chocolate. And I thought, nah, that can't be right because dogs aren't allowed to have chocolate. And in the end, he still kept persisting about this message. So I said to his mum, I'm not sure why he's telling me this, but he's going on and on about chocolate and I don't understand why. And his mum said, she didn't realise at the time that it wasn't good for him, and it was one of their favourite things to do was to sit together and to share a bar of chocolate. So that absolutely confirmed for her that I was speaking with her dog, and that just started the journey for me with connecting with animals in spirit. So I talk to animals in spirit and I talk to animals who are living, and for me it doesn't really make any difference. I connect in with their energetic frequency and their soul, and I connect with animals through photographs. So I just need a photo of an animal showing their face with their eyes open and the questions that their human family want me to ask, and then I have a conversation with them. It's a free will situation for animals, so I actually have to get their consent to have a conversation. I can't force them to have a conversation and I can't force them to answer the questions. But once they consent, then we go and have the conversation. And every animal I'm spoken with has just been delighted to have the opportunity to answer their humans' questions, but to also pass on their messages. So particularly with our animals in spirit, if the humans weren't there at the time when they passed away, it means the animals have a chance to say thank you. And I love getting all these messages of love and gratitude for the care and love they've received while they were with their family, because they grieve as well on the other side and they can't be here to physically comfort us. But it's just lovely being able to connect with them. So from starting with that little dog with his material ball and chocolate, I've gone on to have lots and lots of conversations now with animals in spirit, and they teach me so much about what happens, particularly with our soul journeys and things that I had no idea about. So the first thing that they've taught me is that the soul endures. So even though the physical body is no longer with us, their soul is, and the soul endures. So that relationship we've had with them endures. We can always connect with their soul. So I've had a conversation with a dog who passed over more than 20 years ago. So there's no time limit. We can always connect with them. And I think that's really reassuring that there is no true separation. Yes, they're in the spiritual plane and we're in the physical plane, but we can connect across those planes with telepathic communication, which is what I do. They've also taught me that they can come back and visit us, which is, again, really reassuring for our families. And some of your listeners may have seen their animals come for a visit. And I don't understand how they do that yet, because they no longer own a physical body. The physical body has gone and they're a soul in spirit, but somehow they can put on a temporary physical body so that we can see them when they come. And I've had numerous people tell me they've seen their animals running up and down the corridor, which is just lovely, or they've heard them. So one of my girl cats used to come back and meow, and I'd hear her. And sometimes they come back and let us feel them. So my boy cat used to come back and very gently pat the hair on the back of my head, because he used to sleep on my pillow and massage my head. I've had people feeling their animals jump up on their bed or snuggle next to them, or even pat a paw on their face. So again, it's really reassuring that our animals are letting us know that their soul has transitioned safely, but they still can come back and connect with us, and that love bond we have with them endures as well.
Oh, that is just so beautiful and touching. I have had many animals in my life as well, and it warms my heart. It truly does. I pet sit often here and there, and I find that watching the owners and their pets, even when they're away for a short time, they long for their pets, even though they've gone on just maybe a holiday even. And then when we lose them, or not lose them, when they are no longer with us, then the memories and the connection is dear to our hearts. I know that. Now, you've been doing this for over 10 years now.
Hmm.
And like you said, probably hundreds of people. And tell me, Annie, the animals are okay with what's happened, maybe, but how do you help the animal parents who said goodbye
Yep.
to their animals? Because it can be really hard sometimes when we
Yep.
have lost our pet.
Yeah. And I do say that, having to say goodbye to an animal is one of the most difficult things we do as a human, that we do
Mhm.
develop such strong bonds with them, and it is really difficult. And whether they pass unassisted or whether we have to make that difficult decision to help them past, it is
Mhm.
a very emotional time for us. But our animals also grieve. So they're on the other side looking at us, and they know that we're
Mhm.
upset, and they wish that they could come and physically comfort us, and they can't. And it's tricky because you're grieving, you've got other human family members grieving, but your other animal family members will also be grieving. So your animals will instinctively know that you're upset, and they'll come and try and comfort you, but equally they'll be wanting you to comfort them. So there's all those factors to think about as well.
Mhm.
So what I do with animal parents is to let them know what I've just discussed with you about the fact that they can come for an energetic visit. Again, we can't force them to come, but we can ask them. So we can just talk out loud and say, it will be lovely if you can come and visit me tonight. And then it's up to them if they can come through. We can also ask them to visit in a meditation or in a dream. And then we can see them, we can hear them, we can pick them up, we can hold them, and you can really feel them. And again, that's really reassuring, and it really helps with the grief process, being able to see them and hold them and hear them vocalize.
Mhm.
Part of what I do is a mediumship conversation, where I have a conversation with that animal in spirit and answer the human's questions. So particularly if they weren't home and didn't have a chance to say goodbye, or if they don't know why the animal passed away, they don't have a diagnosis, I can actually ask the animal. They've got good medical knowledge and they can let me know. And quite often, families are still holding on to a lot of remorse or regret or guilt that maybe they didn't pick something up with the animal being ill, and maybe they should have done something earlier, and maybe the animal may have had a longer quality of life. And I spoke to a dog who'd passed away, and his parents were very concerned that they'd missed something with him, and he'd actually had a blood clot. So it's just something random, nothing that they could have predicted, nothing they could have done anything about. And so that gave them so much peace then, knowing that it was something out of their control. The dog didn't hold any grudges against them. He was really happy with how much they'd loved him and cared about him. And so that really gave them that peace of mind that they were searching for.
Mhm.
I spoke to another mum and daughter who'd had a cat, and he'd tragically passed away, and they'd felt really guilty, thinking that if the circumstances had been different, that he may have been able to stay with them for longer.
Mhm.
And I just got this message that he was actually in their dog, and they had a new puppy. And I said to them, do you notice anything familiar about the puppy? And they just kind of looked at each other and they said together, he walks down the stairs the same way as the cat. And so the cat's soul had actually come back and reincarnated in that puppy, and he was back with them. So again, that was such a huge emotional burden lifting moment for them, to know they didn't have to feel guilty or worried anymore because this soul was back with them again in a new body. And that's one of the most amazing things that I have in conversations, is finding out if our animals are going to reincarnate. And I had no idea that this actually happened till one of my cats let me experience it. And from then, I've been able to write about it in my book, but also help lots of animal parents, because the animals seem to know just before they pass or once they have, if there's a body for them to come back in. Now, unfortunately, not every animal does reincarnate, but a lot of them do. And some of them actually come back multiple times. So I've got a client at the moment whose dog in spirit has had 3 lifetimes in a row with her this lifetime as a dog, and is about to come back for his 4th lifetime with her. And that's just amazing. And it really helps with the grief process, knowing that they're going to come back, because yes, you miss the animal who's passed away, but then there's this huge sense of excitement and anticipation, like what are you going to recognize about them? What are you going to feel when you see them for the first time? How are you going to feel when you're holding them in your arms again? It's just an incredible feeling, and you just can't put it into words. It's like euphoria and joy and relief and almost disbelief that they're back again. But that's what they do. And sometimes they come back as the same breed, and sometimes they come back as a different breed. They may have to swap gender to come back in a certain body, and sometimes they're not exactly thrilled at coming back as the opposite sex. But if that's the body that's available for them to come back to their humans, that's what they do. So they can tell me the colour that they're coming back, sometimes a possible time frame, and even sometimes where their humans might find them. Because interestingly, some of the rescue animals know that their humans are going to be looking for another rescue animal again, so they can tell me if they're at a particular rescue organisation. And I've had that experience recently with a lady's cat who passed away, and he actually told me which rescue organisation he was at, and I was able to look at the photos of the available cats and work out which one he was in, and let his mum know, and he's now gone home to his mum. He's now in a female body, but some very similar behaviours and similar features. And it just is so rewarding for me to be able to help people through the grief process by being able to pass on those messages.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I know about you is that you've written more than one book. You've written 2 books. I have some more questions, but I just want to delve into your books for a minute for the people listening today. You have 2 books, and you're working on a 3rd book. Can you give us just a little snip about each one of those books?
Yep, certainly. So my first book is called The Bridge to Animal Consciousness. And this is part of my life purpose. My mission is to raise global awareness about the importance of animals. So I want people to understand that animals have souls, that they feel emotions just like we do. They actually understand everything we say. They're very intelligent and very intuitive. And there's no coincidence that our animals are with us. There will be a reason. And I love finding out what the connection is about why they're here. So in the book, I talk about soul journeys. So animals have a soul purpose and soul lessons to learn, just like we do. I talk about how to welcome a new animal to your household when we have to say goodbye. I talk about the benefits of animal communication, and I also share some of the conversations I've had with animals in zoos and in the wild, and then practical things that we can do to make a difference for animals. So that was my first book, and very excitingly, it went #1 in America and Australia. So I was thrilled about that. And then my second book is called Evolving Hearts and Souls, The Guide to Spiritual Awakening. And when I had my spiritual awakening, I didn't know that I was having a spiritual awakening. I didn't know that you could have a spiritual awakening. I'd never read anything about it or heard anything about it. So I had no idea what was going on. And I actually had my clairvoyant power switch on. And so I'd be having a conversation with someone like you, and I could suddenly see into your past and see into your future. And I'm thinking, what is this? And what am I supposed to do about it? And I did speak to a few people at the time, and they just said, oh, no, don't dabble in that. So I listened to them, and I stopped for a number of years. And then a friend found a course being advertised for spiritual development, and she's very intuitive. And she said, I thought you might be interested in this. So I went along, my clairvoyance switched on, healing switched on, other spiritual gifts switched on. So I've just been on this journey since with the animals, but also with spiritual development, because I love helping people understand what's happening with their reality, because your reality does change as you wake up. And my reality has certainly changed with having the conversations with the animals, because they've taught me now about life after life, and they've taught me about soul reincarnation and lots of fascinating aspects about souls, which I had no idea about. And that's what I'm actually writing my third book about, is particularly the information about the soul journeys that animals have taught me. I think I'm in a unique position where they're sharing their wisdom with me, and I just want to share their wisdom with the world.
Is so fascinating. I think you just said something. You said switched on. For a lot of us, I think we don't have that switch on, so it doesn't make sense at the time. But we've all had that deja vu feel where we've been there before, we've met that person or that animal before, and then the switch is on. But then a lot of us turn it off again, and it's so interesting to meet someone like yourself who has opened themselves to more than, and really embraced it, and then can share with people um, how to use it for themselves. And I so look forward to reading that book, and we're going to have another conversation as that book comes out for sure, a little bit deeper on that one for sure. I do have one more question, I for sure, or more, I want to ask you, because a friend of mine was asking, what advice can you give animal parents who have an elderly or unwell animal? And back to what you shared before, is the animal may be unwell, and you and I know there's a lot of ways to heal that aren't even thought about. In fact, anyone here should reach out to Annie and ask her what are some of the great ways to heal animals, because she also does that as well. But we're working, say, with an elderly animal, and it comes to the decision. And how does one know when the animal really wants to go? I know myself, I made a decision, Annie. My elderly cat, she was 16, Miss Sarah Permaster, and I knew she was at end stages of renal failure. I had been doing all even my former husband was a veterinarian, so I knew all the things to do to keep her alive, but I knew it was the end. And we had a ceremony for her. Myself and all the neighbor children did a ceremony for her. She's still alive. And after they all left, I actually administered what needed to be done via my ex-husband, the veterinarian. So I actually did that myself. I made a decision. I thought to me, it seemed cruel to keep just keeping her alive, because she was a skeleton, basically. And I actually was at peace with it. I wasn't sad. But sometimes I think for people, it can be very traumatic to just even be with a veterinarian to put the animal down, you know. So can you share some insight for
Yep.
people, what they should be looking for, and or how to deal with it,
Yep. Lots of different things to talk about. First of all, my advice would be that if you do have an older animal or an unwell animal, just to make sure you spend lots of time with them, taking photos of them and with them, and videos, because once they pass over, you're not going to be ready to look at them straight away. But once you are, it's just wonderful, particularly having the videos there, to see them healthy and alive and interacting with you. And I know when my cat Patty passed away, I wasn't ready to look at photos for some time, but then I found some videos of him that I didn't even remember taking. And it was just so beautiful because he's purring, he's making Patty paws, and, you know, he's just eternally alive on a video. So I can't stress enough how important that is, to have those visual memories with them. Now, interestingly, sometimes our animals actually take on health symptoms for us. So if your animal has similar symptoms to you or someone else in your family, they may well be taking that on to help you. And it's not something that we ask them to do, but it's something that they love to do because it's a way of being of service and they love helping us. So sometimes it's interesting having a conversation and just finding out how much of their symptoms are actually theirs and how much they're taking on for someone else. I spoke with a dog who had a number of different health issues. And so I said to her, how much of this is yours and how much of this is your human's? And she said only the anxiety was hers. And she had anxiety because she was worried about her human mum. And all of her other symptoms were for her human mum and her human grandmother. So it's interesting finding that out as well. Sometimes our animals try and hide health issues because they don't want us stressing and worrying about them. And sometimes they stay longer than they should just because they don't want to leave us any more than we want them to leave us. They know that we're going to grieve and they know that they're going to grieve as well. And they just push themselves to stay as long as they possibly can. So it's important just to let them know verbally that, you know, you'd love them to stay as long as they can, but you want them to let you know when it's their time to go, and you don't want them staying just for your benefit. So my cat Paddy, towards the end of his life, was quite unwell, but he wanted to stay here. And I made that commitment to him that I was happy to look after him. I had so much love for him. He had so much love for me. But he had to let me know when it was his time to go, and he did. And I'd always thought, because we had such a close relationship, that I didn't think I'd be strong enough to have to assist him to pass over. But I had to learn that because he wasn't strong enough to pass over on his own, that it is a great act of love to assist an animal to pass over. And that's what we had to do. Whereas my other cat, who'd been my animal communicated cat, she had a heart attack one morning, and it was such a huge shock because she was quite young. She had no health issues. And I didn't know what was going on and why she'd done that. But fortunately, I was able to speak to her afterwards. And that was when she taught me about soul reincarnation. And she told me to stop being so sentimental and that she was coming back. And she did. So whether they suddenly go and you don't have a chance to say goodbye, or whether you do, it's still a very emotional time for you and for them. So it's making the most of their time. So for an animal who's still alive, it's, you know, giving them their favourite treats, taking them to their favourite places, letting them have time interacting with their favourite humans and other animals, because we just never know how long they're going to be with us, and we can't take any day for granted. The other important thing we need to do is to let them know that we love them and that we're grateful that they're in our lives. They know that, but hearing us say it makes a big difference for them. Love and gratitude are very high frequency vibrational words, and our animals are very sensitive to vibrational frequency. So every day telling them we love them and we're grateful that they're here, they love hearing that, and that will really help. So with animals, when you're wondering whether it is their time to go, you can ask them to show you when they're ready to go. And so they may stop eating, their eyes may cloud over, the behaviours can get very different. So they're trying to communicate with you. And so they can use their eyes, they can use vocalisations. Just before Paddy was ready to pass away, he made some vocalisations I'd never heard of before. So I knew he was telling me that it was his time to go. They can use changes in behaviour or their body language. They've got all those different ways of communicating with us, but it's important that we ask them. before they pass or after they pass, we can communicate with them and find out what their wishes are. Like, do they want to be cremated? Do they want to be buried? Do they want to be in a funeral urn? Do they want their ashes scattered somewhere? Do they want to be buried somewhere? Do they want a certain kind of urn or a box with their ashes or some kind of memorial for them? So they're able to give us advice about what they want as well. So when Riley passed away, she told me that she wanted a brass urn, and it had to be a particular shade of blue, and it had to have silver on it. So I spoke to the animal crematorium, and they only had pottery urns, and they had a blue one, but it had gold on it. But when I spoke and said what I was after, the lady said, "Oh, I've seen something like that on eBay." Now, I'd never been on eBay, and I wasn't keen to buy an urn where I didn't know whether it had been used before or not. But I actually looked up animal funeral urns and found a business in Melbourne, in Australia, that had only started about a month before. And on the second page of their brass urns, here's this blue hand-painted enamel urn in the colour that she wanted, inlaid with a nickel pattern of flowers called Forget-Me-Not. And it was exactly what she wanted, and she knew I was going to find it. So they're things we can find out as well, so it feels as though you're honouring and respecting your animal by understanding what their wishes are. So a long answer to your question, but lots of things we can do to prepare for when we have to say goodbye, but then also knowing that it's not a true separation, that love we have with them endures, and that we can also connect with them. And I think that really helps with having to say goodbye, because it's goodbye to the physical body, but not goodbye to their soul.
Exactly. Oh, this is so fascinating. I mean, most of us just love and adore our pets, right? And to know that we could actually communicate with them. I feel that when we have our pet, we're talking to them and we're communicating with us. But when they're not physically here anymore, we go, oh, what, where are they? What happened? And sometimes, oh, here's one that I need to ask you. When an animal might be lost, I lost a dog once, and we found out what happened later. We did get him back, but he was gone for a month. And I tell you, that frantic feel that you have because you don't know. Um, we were blessed to get the dog back again. The pound called me and said, "We think we've seen your dog, but we can't catch him." We were on a long trip, on a long journey, and suddenly we get home and he's not in the car anymore, in the back of the pickup, with a cover and everything. So anyway, someone we think opened the door in Reno at some point, and he got out. But I just was frantic to find out what happened to this dog. Like something's happened. The other dog was still in the car, but not him. Anyway, what about people who have lost a dog or that sort of thing? What do you say to them?
Yeah, and that's tricky because sometimes they've been taken by people who want to sell them to other people or use them in some way, and that's really sad and unfortunate for our animals. Sometimes they do get lost, and I've had the same experience with a cat who disappeared for a number of weeks and came back with a dislocated hip. Now, this was before I was an animal communicator, so I've got no idea what happened, but the vet just assumed that she might have got locked in someone's garage or shed somewhere and had to wait for someone to open it before she could get out and come home again. So I think, and I've spoken to a number of animals who have had experiences and they've deliberately been taken, but they've managed to escape and somehow get found so they can get reunited with their families again. But it is really stressful both for the human and for the animal. And I was thinking, when you're talking about communicating, I just do want to stress that animals do understand everything that we say. They've got a very sophisticated understanding of language. And so it's really important that we do just keep talking to them and having a running conversation. They love knowing what we're doing, and they love knowing that we understand, that they understand what we're saying. And that just deepens the relationships. When they know that we know they're understanding everything, it changes everything. And I've had people tell me me, they've just started talking to their animals and totally different behaviours. They've been more attentive, more direct eye contact, spending more time near them. It just does change the relationship. And then, of course, if people want to learn telepathic communication, that deepens the relationship even more, because then you're actually having a proper two-way conversation with them. And that's one of the services I offer as well, as animal communication mentorship. So I actually work with animal parents and their animals, and we have one-on-one sessions where we're asking questions and getting answers, but then asking the animals what messages they've received, and then confirming that they're actually getting the messages that their humans are sending, so we know that both parties are sending and receiving accurately. And again, it's really interesting finding out what words they know, because we say, send mum a word starting with the letter S. We had a cat the other day who said supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. And I'm thinking, how does the cat know that word? And then his sister cat had to send a word starting with the letter T, and she sent Tyrannosaurus Rex. And some of the words they send are not words we use in everyday language, so they just know a lot more. So for people who think their animal might understand no and walk, I'm here to tell you they actually know a lot more. So they understand everything we're saying, so they're listening all the time, and they're trying to communicate with us.
That's my funny husband there.
Yes, so yes, Greg, your animals will understand what you're saying too.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Well, I did not know this about you, Annie, that you actually help teach people how to communicate with your animals. Is that in one of the books, or is that a course
No.
you're teaching?
I've only just started that recently, and I'm just finishing my first cohort of students this week.
Wow,
So
congratulations.
it's just been fascinating working. I'm doing a lot of work behind the scenes with the animals, so I prepare them for all the sessions we're doing, so they know what we're going to be asking them to do, because it's very different for them as well, having to help their humans learn to talk animal. But it's just preparing them. So we do things like getting them to send a coloured number. So they might send a red number 1 or a blue number 7. So I talk with them the day before and just prepare them for all the different things we're going to be doing. And so it means then they've got time to work out what they want to send. And sometimes they're so smart, they actually send 2 answers to the questions because they've had time to think about it. But we can ask them to send telepathic communication includes verbal messages. So you actually hear their voices in your head. It's not an audible sound in your ear. You hear the voice in your head. And so they can send verbal messages. They're also very good at visual messages. So they can just put a little picture in our mind. So if we ask them to send an image starting with E, they can send us an image of an egg. So they understand how to send images. And again, they understand the letters. Or they can send feelings and emotions. And so we can ask them to send their human an emotion, and then the human can feel, whether it's excitement and all the bouncy energy, or whether they're sending love, or what the emotion is. So again, some of the animals have a very strong preference for verbal communication like humans do, and some of them are very strong visually, and they can send the actual little image that you see somehow in your head, or they can even send a little video snippet to show you something, or they can send you the letters that spell a word. So the other day we asked a cat to send an emotion as letters, and so she sent the letters LOVE to her mum. So that was just beautiful for her to receive that. So we do these sessions one-on-one. Everyone watches a series of little introductory videos first to help prepare them. I do some activation work to help with the communication channel, but also to help with the animals as well. And then we have these fortnightly mentorship sessions and go through the exercises, and then everyone practices for the 2 weeks in between. And then we progress to the more complex exercises in the next session. So it's just amazing, and it just changes your world and your animal's world once you can communicate with them and you can find out what they want to tell you when they want to tell you. and they can just tell you anything and everything. You can find out why they're with you, whether you've had past soul connections with them before, anything you want to ask them. If they don't want to answer a certain question, that's their choice, and we have to respect that. But so far, every question that I've asked a domestic animal, they've been happy to answer.
I have one last interesting question. What is your favorite, if you have a favorite animal to work with? I'm sure you've worked with many, dogs and cats for sure, horses, I'm sure. Are there any other interesting animals you've worked with?
Yes, I've actually worked with some snakes, and that's been very interesting,
Mhm,
including one snake whose mum got her out of her enclosure so she could have a stretch and roam around. And her
mhm,
mum had her back turned to her for a couple of minutes, and when she turned around, the snake had disappeared.
mhm,
And she couldn't really call her by her name. So she didn't know where she was, and she looked and she couldn't find her. So she ended up contacting me because I've spoken with her snake before.
mhm,
And she was playing a game of hide and seek, and she said, I'm, right at her feet. And we worked out where she was, but mum just couldn't see her. She was just so well hidden. And she's a big snake, so it's hard to hide, but she was. And I said to her, "Oh, you're very good at playing hide and seek." And she said, "Yes, I won." So I ended up saying to mum, "Look, I think you're going to have to walk out of that room and give her time to come out and then come back in." And by the time mum came back in, she'd actually climbed up on some furniture so mum could see her and put her back in her enclosure again. So, yeah, interesting talking with the snakes. They've all got different personalities. I've spoken with lots of different animals at zoos, birds and crocodiles and lions and all sorts of animals. So they all universally seem to understand English. And I've spoken to animals in the wild, and I've written about that in my book as well. So, and it seems to be that whoever speaks to them, they can understand the language that they're being spoken to in. So if the person doesn't speak English at home and they speak another language, the animals can understand that. So they're just amazing. Some of them are very evolved souls, and what they know is just incredible. So for the animals that have come to us to teach us as one of their roles, once we can communicate with them telepathically, then they can start teaching us. And I've been very fortunate to have some very gifted teachers with me, and that's some of the information that I'm sharing in my books, because I just feel they've shared it with me and I need to share that with the world.
This has just been so fascinating, Annie. Um, what is the best way for people to connect with you, to either just get some help with their communication with their animal, or if they want to go to the next level and actually learn how to do that themselves?
Lots of options. So I can see we've got my website link scrolling across the bottom of the screen. So www.cosmicheartintuitive.com.au, and there's an option in there where you can send me a message, or you can connect with me on Facebook, Annie Bourke, Bourke, or on LinkedIn. Or you can email me, and my email is chintuitive@bigpond.com. I'm happy to set up a Zoom chat with people and just find out what's happening with your animals, particularly if they've got behaviour or health issues where you're not sure what's going on. I'm not an animal behaviourist or a vet, but I can actually ask why they're doing certain things and they'll tell me, and that can give peace of mind as well, knowing what they're trying to tell you.
Mhm. Well, I feel like I've learned so much today, Annie. Thank you for coming on Storyman TV. And we look forward as your next book comes out to learn and dive in a little deeper on that one. So thank you everyone for coming today, and share this with a friend who loves their pets. You never know who is interested in going that next level with their pet. Thank you so much.